The main research objectives of both projects were to investigate the hypothesis that associating a cost with overall robot complexity during evolution facilitates the evolution of lower complexity robots without sacrificing task performance, and secondly, to further investigate the environmental conditions under which complexity evolves. Christina's part of the project investigated the aforementioned objectives using a performance-based fitness function. Mine were run using novelty search. The complexity cost applied in both projects takes the form of a biologically inspired energy cost affecting the simulation time over which fitness is evaluated.
These research objectives were motivated by gaps in related literature with regard to investigations into complexity using a complexity metric representative of both brain and body complexity. In engineering applications, overall robot complexity directly affects the feasibility of solutions. Furthermore, previous work investigating the correlations between environmental complexity and evolved robot complexity has shown mixed results. Additionally, no previous studies have explicitly investigated the evolution of complexity under novelty search. Experiments I ran using an objective-based fitness function, evidence was found to refute my primary research objective, which was, given conducive environmental conditions, complexity increases even with imposed complexity costs. Results from 8 of the environments suggested that lower average complexity was involved with a complexity cost versus without. I wanted to demonstrate what these differences in complexity might look like. So here we can see 2 robots involved in environment 6, which was a medium complexity, in which it was found that robots evolved with a cost were less complex than those evolved with a cost. So on the left, we can see a robot evolved without a complexity cost, and on the right, we see a robot evolved with a complexity cost. It's immediately obvious that the robot on the left is much more complex, at least morphologically, than the robot on the right. It contains more body parts and more hinge node body part types, which by our definition of complexity, morphologically, is more complex. Moving on to the secondary research objective, which was to evaluate whether the imposition of a complexity cost enables the evolution of lower complexity, equally performing robots versus those evolved without a cost. It was found that a selection pressure for lower complexity maximally performing robots was exerted in 6 of the environments. This lends support to the secondary research objective. I've chosen to demonstrate robots evolved in environment 11, which was a high complexity tilted environment. It is worth noting that robots evolved in this environment with a complexity cost had both lower average complexity and higher average fitness than those evolved without a cost. I'm going to try and demonstrate the fitness differences between these robots. If this is the robot evolved without a complexity cost. This is an example of the movement that you could expect. This is not the greatest performance. This is the robot evolved with a cost, again in environment 11. Much smoother movement. You can see that it's got a higher fitness overall.
The main finding of the novelty search experiment was that in almost every environment, the populations evolved with a custom complexity in blue and without one in green are statistically comparable in terms of average fitness, highest average fitness, and the associated complexity. Hence, the complexity cost did not facilitate the evolution of lower complexity robots as was hypothesized. From the results, we can also see that the imposition of a cost on complexity was not detrimental to task performance. There is a possibility that the complexity cost guided the search toward more efficient task performance, resulting in the complexity cost being seen to have no impact during fitness evaluation. Although this cannot be ruled out, I believe the results are more a function of novelty search being able to more broadly search the search space and be able to identify viable solutions despite the cost on complexity. In terms of the environmental conditions under which complexity evolves, an interesting finding was that the complexity evolved in the tilted environment was statistically comparable with the flat environment, suggesting no great difference in environmental complexity. We can also see that the irregular environment selected for greater complexity than any other environment. Terrain friction was shown to not have a predictable effect on the evolved complexity, whilst obstacles in the environment select for greater complexity in all cases, with the irregular environment selecting for even higher complexity than the evenly spaced obstacles of the same height. I will now show an individual evolved in environment set 3, which selected for greater robot complexity while task performance remained low. This is the environment with irregularly spaced obstacles of differing heights.